Welcome to the Thor Hour. I'm your host, John Thorhauer. Join me in conversations as I explore the talents, passions, and curiosities from Frederick, Maryland, and beyond. My guest today is Adam Lowe, an elite ultra runner recognized by Ultra Running Magazine for his performances in both the 100 and 50-mile distances in 2021. Adam is a member of the Frederick Steeplechasers Running Club and wears all hats when it comes to running. Whether it is running a beer mile or 100-mile race, pacing friends of any running level, or acting as a race director, he has stepped up for the challenge. You can find Adam out somewhere running every day, whether it is around his hometown of Martinsburg, West Virginia, on the trail in the Appalachian Mountains, or banging out miles on the C&O Canal. You can get this episode by watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting app. I've provided timeline bookmarks in the show notes so you can quickly and easily navigate the interview. Please see the show notes for the timeline, links to this episode, and guest links. And now, without further ado, Adam Lowe on the Thor Hour. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited that you're here, so thank you for taking the time. So it should be a fun conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I actually was introduced to you through a Facebook group, Frederick Steeplechasers, and somebody was giving a shout out to you about some of the stuff I'm sure we'll be talking about this evening. But the one that they were talking about was Ultra Running Magazine put you in the, I guess you put yourself there, but one of the top 100 running performances of the year for the 100 mile, but then you also did it for the 50 mile. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh man, we got to talk.
Right.
I love running. I really love trail running. I'm nowhere near that, but I'm definitely interested and thought it would be like a fun conversation. So just go through a brief rundown of a couple of there's a lot of performances that are pretty awesome, but some of the ones that stand out a little bit. Like I said, 2021 Ultra Running Top 100. You did a 100 miler, which I'm sure we'll get into some. So this was number 44 out of the 100 performances. And that was a 15-hour and 32-minute race.
Right.
So pretty intense. And then another 2021 Ultra Running Top 100 performance for the 50-miler. And I think this one was the JFK 50.
Correct. Yep.
Had a nice shirt there.
Thanks.
Is that from that one?
This is from 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And that one was 6 hours, 38 minutes, and 19 seconds.
Right.
So, again, pretty intense. And then in 2020, you won the Fire in the Mountain 50K.
Yes.
Came in numero uno on that one. That was 4 hours, 56 minutes, and 17 seconds. So, and there's a lot of other races in there, of course. But very impressive. Like I've run a 50K once, and it pretty much wrecked me. But training for it was cool, and participating in it was a lot of fun. But definitely have a lot of questions for you.
Okay,
just
great.
thinking through, what's this guy think? We could just start out. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your story of how you got into running.
Okay, yeah. So back in 2010, I was teaching high school PE. I was coaching lacrosse at the time, and then I was also coaching soccer. And I was just, after college, I just got out of shape and just let life get in the way of being healthy and stuff. So I was actually 215 pounds in January of 2010.
Okay.
And then I literally woke up one day and decided I needed to get back into better shape. So I went to the computer and I tried to sign up for the Marine Corps Marathon. I didn't even know you had to wait until like March to sign up. Yeah. I thought you could just go sign up. I knew very little about running at the time. Right. So they had a 10K you could sign up for. It was called Run to Register. So I decided I would sign up for the 10K. It was in about 2.5 months.
So you hadn't done any running before that. I mean, you had coached.
I'd coached sports, but I'd done no
running
running before.
Right. So did you even know what a 10K was?
Probably not. Not really. I definitely didn't know anything about like what it entailed. So I probably had to Google the distance.
Right.
So, but I was like, well, this will get me into the marathon. And my older sister, had run Marine Corps a couple years before.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I got the idea.
Okay.
And then, so I signed up for the 10K. I went 2.5 months later and ran like a 48 something for the 10K, my first ever race.
Yeah. And that like by that time, how many months later you say that?
That was just about 2.5 months later. So it was March of 2010.
What were you weighing in at there?
Probably
roughly
205 or something.
Yeah,
not
gonna
very
lose tons of in that period of time.
So, but I'll tell you, a big defining moment was because I'm pretty competitive from high school sports and playing college intramural sports and stuff. So I actually stayed for the awards ceremony and watched like the people get their winter awards, and I was like, I want to be up there.
Oh.
So that's kind of what fueled the fire, and then so I kind of worked up towards that. But and then later that year, I did Marine Corps in 3:58. My first marathon in October. Afterwards, I laid on the ground and I prayed for God to take me, and I just wanted to be done running, but obviously I didn't stop. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you went from, you say 215 pounds down to what was the weight you kind of settled in at?
About 160. Yeah.
Wow.
Right now.
50 plus.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to race about at 160. So.
Okay. And roughly, how long did it take for you to make that transition?
Probably 4 or 5 years to get down and to stay down at that spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of like periods of like kind of up and down, like you would get down close to that and then go back up?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't run consistently for the first couple years. Like it took a while. I think the first year I ran about 700 miles altogether, and then I kind of increased it a little bit each year.
Right. Now, did you do that knowing that was the smart way to do it?
I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had no idea. When I got into running, I was like, I'll just go run today. And then I'd go run 2-3 miles and then I'd be done. I wore all the wrong clothes, big basketball shorts to go running. I didn't know what I was doing at all. So it was definitely a learning experience.
You were probably one of those guys. I ran a half marathon, the Freedom Run.
Okay.
I've never done that one. And there was a guy who was running in front of me. He literally looked like he just rolled out of bed that morning and was like, I guess I'll go run something. And he had on basketball shorts, these shoes that like weren't even running shoes. And I am running as hard as I can run. And he's in front of me just like flopping along, and he was just driving me nuts.
Right.
So you were that for somebody, right?
My first Marine Corps, I had on big basketball shorts. I had a blue Under Armour long sleeve and then a cotton T-shirt.
Yeah.
Like it was horrible.
Right.
I wish I'd known now what but got to live and learn.
Yeah.
So.
That's part of it for sure. So how much was weight loss and how much was just a competitive nature, or you couldn't really separate the two?
I think once I started losing the weight, I kind of got more confidence, and then I kind of realized, hey, I'm pretty good at running, like I'm pretty good at this. So then I kind of enjoyed it even more, and then it just kept building and building. Honestly, when I ran my first marathon, I was told sub 4 was good. Mm-hmm. Like early on, like January, February, that's what I was told was good. So then that was my goal,
right?
To be sub 4, and then so I ran 3:58. And I promise you, I ran the last 3 miles, but it probably was walking.
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I was just competitive. I wanted to be good at it, so I just kept working.
So for you, thinking, hey, I think I might be good at this, was that always like an internal voice saying that to you, or was it other people from the outside?
No, it was kind of like a results thing. I looked at, you go back and look. I actually have all my training written down in notebooks from 2010.
Oh, wow.
So I'm up to my 4th notebook now. So I go back and look at it at certain points, and
really?
I go, my first run was like a 1.5 mile run, and it was at 14 minutes or something. So it's easy. You go back and look at that, and you go, hey, look how much better I've gotten.
Yeah. Just
by running. I mean, so it's pretty cool to be able to go back and look and see how much better you've gotten at something.
That's pretty cool. Were you like that before you were running? Like, was there other stuff that you were like that with?
Nope. I don't know what.
Really?
I don't know what it was. Yeah,
That's pretty interesting. It just that was your thing.
Yep.
You didn't know it was until.
Of course, back then I didn't have Strava. I didn't have.
Yes,
I
right.
used to use a Timex when I went running, and I'd run on the track, so I knew the distance.
Yeah.
Or in the neighborhood, I had driven those roads, so I knew about the distance.
Yeah.
Before I got a Garmin or anything, so I was.
Because that was, you said, like 2010.
Yeah, 2010. So
Yeah.
I didn't have Strava back then.
Right.
I don't know if it was out or not.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
I'm
not
sure
sure.
Garmin was, but
Yeah. You're like, whatever.
Yeah, I
don't
didn't
even
know what Garmin was, so
Yeah.
that's what I did. I just went on the track and wrote it down.
They
So
probably help kind of keep
yeah.
it simple for you.
And I still do it now. I have, of course, now I have Strava, I have Garmin,
Yeah.
everything, but I still write it down.
Yeah.
In the book. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
So, like, it sounds like the running obviously gave you confidence in running, right?
Uh-huh.
It kind of like fed upon itself as you got better. You realize, hey, I can be good at this, and
Right.
maybe I could get better at this. Did it affect your confidence like outside of running? Like or maybe another way of asking, like, where were you before running with your confidence level, and how did this like change that?
If I wouldn't be doing this right now.
Okay.
Probably even a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And like just being in front, like I'm a teacher, so being in front of people, I was still kind of shy.
Huh.
Unless I was coaching, I could get involved with those kids
Right.
pretty good. But yeah, I'm usually pretty much an introvert.
Yeah.
And but it definitely helped build confidence and meeting new people throughout and being able to help them out. So
Yeah.
running's done a lot for me. So
that's
yeah.
really neat to hear. That's pretty cool. Any advice for maybe somebody who's watching? And like I said, when I first talked to you, I had no idea that was part of your story. Pretty amazing. And so there might be other people watching from different ends of that perspective, right? And some of them might be just starting out, trying to lose weight. Got to be tough. So I don't know. Any advice for people like that?
We'll talk about this a little bit more later too, I think. But I would just say you just got to try to find something you enjoy, whether or not it's running, maybe it's racquetball or pickleball or something.
Yeah.
If you enjoy it, you're going to do it.
And if you don't,
then
it's
a
probably
struggle.
not,
Yeah. I mean, I have days where I go, I do not want to run today.
Okay.
And then you go out there and start it, and it's
Right.
perfectly fine. But
Yeah.
I always found my best runs when I'm enjoying them. It's just so easy to do.
Was it like that even as you were like early on? Was it that the enjoyment, again, you're going to have days, good days, bad days, but the enjoyment of just running would sometimes keep you going and motivate you maybe even more than the weight loss? Or how would you kind of?
For me, at the beginning, maybe after the first year, after like some of the weight was coming off, and my times were going down, I was trying to get more competitive.
Yeah.
So being competitive, I always had another race on the schedule. So I could always look at that and go, all right, I want to do my best at this race.
Okay.
So now I got to train. I got to run. You got to go out there and do what I'm supposed to do.
That makes sense. It's pretty interesting. Actually, let me bring something up here about that. So let's see. We'll look at your races. So this is ultrarunning.com. It's got your. I mean, this isn't all your races. Like
No.
these are just the really long
The
ones.
longer
right?
ones, yes.
Yeah, starting back in 2016.
Right.
Right.
I don't know what the Pilot Mountain to Hanging Rock Ultra is. That's not me though.
Is this you?
That's me. But they put like there's another Adam Lowe out there
I saw
somewhere.
there was.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
but yeah, the
Right.
the Frozen
other-
Heart 50K one is that was my first ultra I did. It was a 10-mile loop. So the year before I actually did 2 loops.
Yeah.
And then I went and ran Boston. It was a couple weeks before Boston.
Okay.
So I just did 2 loops to kind of get a good training.
Yeah.
And then the next year I came back and I won that race 2 years in a row. I think as of now, I think I'm the only person to go sub 4 hours at that race.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
Because I mean, for me, just looking at this, it looks like you run a lot, but these aren't even all the these aren't even all the races. Like you're doing way more races in between all of this stuff, right?
Yes. So before, in 2020, I guess that might have been it because of the virus, right? We had the one March 7th was the week before Corona hit,
Right.
and I hurt my knee 3 days before that race. And I almost didn't go, and I woke up in the morning, and I figured I could walk. I might as well go run the race.
How it goes.
So I made it to about mile 6, and then I was actually opening the door of the race director's car at the aid station to get a ride back to the finish line. And I had a friend who actually paced me in the 100-mile race. Mm-hmm. She came by and she said, just run one more mile with me. And then we ended up doing 26 together to finish the 50K. Wow. So it was a struggle. That one was a struggle. But, those are my longer races.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I asked you if you had any sponsorships. You said, well, you're an ambassador for a few different things. What are those?
I'm an ambassador for Honey Stinger. I've been an ambassador for them for maybe 5 or 6 years now.
How'd that come about?
They just, every year they have like applications you can fill out online. So I filled it out probably 5 or 6 years ago, and they signed me on there. Nice. So it's pretty good. I post on social media for them, and then they give us discounts on their products and stuff. So that, and then Boca gear, like hats and like the one I'm wearing now, and then squirrel nut butter. Okay. So that's another interesting story. We'll talk maybe when we get in later about the canal. Yeah. We're
definitely gonna have to talk about that.
Yeah. So when I ran with Mike Wardian on his fastest known time on the canal, he had squirrel nut butter, and I got a pretty bad rash under my arm, and that was the first time I had heard of it. Oh, wow. So I used it, and now I was like, this stuff's great.
Does work.
So that's how I came about with them. But
nice. So a lot of people run, right? So, but you run really, 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 really far, right? So, and let me just give people, we talked about it earlier, but let me go through a few of these. So, for example, you did the 50K. You've done a bunch of 50Ks, but this one in particular, the Cat 50K, which is a tough one.
Yeah.
Which is actually like, I think 32 some miles.
It's more than 31.
It's more than a 50K.
Right. It is.
And it was 5+ hours. And I was looking at this, my eyebrows went up a little bit. I was like, oh, your pace was down a little bit on that one because that one's a killer, right? Yes. Your 11-minute, 16-second pace, I think, on that one. But that over 5,000 feet elevation gain, so 5+ hours. On your races, as I was looking at them, that's going to be on the shorter side of things, right? Uh-huh. And so then we go up to 50 milers, which are going to be for you around 7 hours of running, give or take, averaging 7 minutes, 58-second pace. And then we go up to the 100 miler, which is going to be like 15 hours. And then we'll talk about at the end what you're thinking about doing, which is even longer than that.
Right.
So, you're planning a race, which we're talking about, could take a little less than 36 hours.
Right.
So what the heck? Why do you run such long runs? What's the thought process? There's a lot, so for example, a friend that both of us know, Corey, Corey really, I think he prefers faster, shorter runs, right? And so I don't know, what's your thought on that? What do you get out of it?
I think for me, it's just a challenge. So I've done 27 marathons, and then a handful of the last 2 years I did virtual Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. I don't include those in those though. So, and then I've done a couple more on my own, just running and stuff. So, but I think it's a challenge. Like when you talk about a marathon, for me, I don't know what's going to happen after mile 22. I've had great days running the marathon after mile 22, and I've had extremely bad days after that. So, for me, like in the 50K, I get out there and pace yourself right, and you get to mile 26, 27, you just don't know how the body's going to react. And I like that challenge. I like that element of surprise and being able to push past anything that comes in your mind when you're at that distance. For the 100 miler, I don't know what it was, but it was at mile 90. Mile 90, I could have just been done.
Yeah.
I had 10 miles to go, but I wanted to be finished. So for me, getting to that's the point I wanted to get to, though.
Right.
I wanted to see what I had after that point.
Yeah, there's something about grinding yourself down to where all the easy reasons aren't going to do it.
Right.
There's got to be something in you, and it's not going to be the same for every person, right? But that is going to make you in that moment take the next step.
Right. And that's what I look forward to on these longer runs. Last year in JFK, it's going to sound really weird, but it was mile 48. I felt great until 48, and then a switch just went off, and I got cold, and I just wanted to be done running, but I had 2 miles to go.
Right.
So at that point, you just have to bear down and do it. So, but that's the point I look forward to, is the point where everything hurts and you want to just die. Yeah. And you have to keep going, right. And you just want to push past it. So but that's what I look forward to. So it's just that challenge of not knowing what's coming, but how are you going to respond to it?
So can that challenge for you now with the distances that you're running, can you still, does that challenge come in a marathon, or is it like it's got to be longer distances now for that? Like, it's not that you would say it's easy to run a marathon, right. But does that challenge come up in that distance for you?
It comes up. It's a matter of when. I mean, last year I ran in August. I ran a race it was called the Midnight on the Falls. So it started at 10 p.m. And then you had to do 4 6.56 mile loops. Okay. And it was pretty hilly. So at that point, and it was humid. It was in August. So mile 22 and a half. My calf started cramping. So at that point, I mean, I was in the lead. I was winning the race. Yeah. And I was on, at that point, still just under a sub 3. And I had to drag my left leg with me for the next 3.5, 4 miles. So it still comes, and you never know when it's going to come. Right. So, and then in October, I went to Boston, and I felt great the entire time. And I ran a 2:58. Wow. So I never felt that part of hitting it. Yeah. I just lived off the crowds and just ran. So it was great. But it still comes. It definitely still comes.
Yeah. So everything you've described so far as what you get out of it and why you do the distance you do, I assume comes in the race. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of training that happens in between those races. Yeah. And so what's it like for you? Like, what do you get? So you've described, a lot of what you described would be like what you get out of racing. Right. But you can't do that kind of racing without a lot of running. And so now that you've been running for years, you are fit. Is it just habit now? Is there joy in it? Like, what is it for the average day when you're going out and just beating feet for an hour or whatever?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one thing. It's into my daily routine. Like actually in 2 or 3 days, I've run every day for 2 years. I stopped after that race I was talking about when I hurt my knee. I stopped for 3 days and then I started again. Okay. So but I go out every day. Like it's not an option. Yeah. So, but I feel so much better after I run, like mentally, physically. So it's just something I need to do. Even after the day after the 100-miler, of course I waited till like 8 o'clock the next day at night. And I tried to go run. I mean, that was a tough mile. That one was tough to get out of bed for. Gosh. But then I wanted to keep the streak alive. Yeah. And then I usually have monthly goals for mileage and then yearly goals. So all that stuff kind of keeps you encouraged and inspired to hit those goals too.
So like right now, what would you think you're averaging like hours a week that you're running? 9
or 10. Okay. About 80 miles a week.
Okay.
Yeah. I run I'm not a great role model for that. I run all my miles way too fast. They're all between 6:50 and 7 minutes.
I was wondering.
If you look
at
Strava, I'm a bad role model for that. So don't follow my paces if you're. But part of that is time. Like today, I ran 4 miles during my planning period at school, and then I ran 5 miles right after school before I came up here. So I only had so much time to get it in. So that's part of it. Part of it's me being impatient and not smart, but.
So, all right. Well, I'll hold a question off here that I want to ask, but we'll get there. So let's talk about training a little bit, right? So what does it look like for you? When you're running some of these really big races, my understanding is, you start thinking about your training in terms of a year of training and not just a couple months or
cycle,
whatever.
Right?
You'll start to lay out your year and what it looks like. Is that how you approach things now?
Yeah. So before COVID, I was a little bit different. I was exactly what you described. I was pretty strict on, Boston's in 3 months. This is my training plan, my 12-week plan for Boston. And then after that, I have whatever summer race I have, and I'm going to do speed work on Tuesday, and I'm going to do tempo on Thursday. Yep. So I was very strict with that. And then COVID hit, and all the races were canceled, and I just decided I would just run as far as I could every day. Like I would get in as many miles as I could,
Right.
That my schedule allowed for me.
Right.
And so that was kind of a big switch for me going into the ultra world, rather than just doing marathons. That time I had, and there were no races.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know. Now it's like it's a completely different mindset. Now I do look out and go, all right, I'm going to do this in October. So I got to do this before. We talked before on the phone, or on
Video.
Yeah, that I'm doing Catoctin again this year.
Yeah.
Not because I want to,
Right.
but because I know it's going to help me for JFK.
Yeah.
So that's another
Which is
stepping
like
stone.
4 months later. Or
Right.
something
Right.
like
But
that,
I know
right?
just being out on the trails
Yep.
for 6-7 hours is going to help me out. So that's why I do some of the stuff I do now.
Okay. So it sounds like if you go on a vacation, you always got a pair of running shoes with you then.
Or two. Yeah. Yeah. So my girlfriend Katie and I are both runners. So it's pretty nice when
That
you
helps.
have somebody else who's supportive. So
You're not leaving them. She's coming with you some of those.
Right.
some of
Right.
those
So
runs.
last summer we went to the beach and, I had my time to go run. She had her time to go run. And then we went to the beach and, we took the kids out to the beach and stuff. So you're right though. I talked about it before. I run every day. So there's got to be some built-in time for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. We talked a little bit, trying to just get to know each other a little. You had mentioned this, and it's coming out even now as you're talking about your running. Obviously, numbers are important to you for motivation and probably for planning as well. So there's a lot of, nowadays there's a lot of numbers you can keep track of when you're running.
Right.
So you can go kind of crazy with it and get into all sorts of different stuff. So are there particular numbers for you that you're always kind of keeping an eye on? Like pace might be one of those things, but then there might be like weekly mileage or some of the, depending on what watch you use or what, fitness kind of software you use, they'll even have these scores of like how run down you are. And
right. I don't have, my watch doesn't do all that.
Okay.
So, but I try to get in 80 a week at least.
Okay.
There's some weeks where
what's a long run for you in an 80-mile week? And
right now I'm actually averaging about 12 miles a day. And some of it's broken up a little bit. My longest run recently, I think, has only been 18 miles.
Okay.
But I've been doing a lot more like during the week. So
you usually go by mileage rather than time?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I try to get in about 80 a week. A month or so ago, I got bored, so I figured I'd run 100. So that's what I did. I ran 101 that week,
Yeah.
Just different stuff like that. But I'm definitely have a weekly goal of 80. And then on Strava, I have a monthly goal set at 300.
Okay.
So I try to do that. And then my year goal for the year is 4,000.
Okay.
Last 2 years ago, the year 2020, I ran 42:30 or something. And then last year was like 38. So
okay.
It's up there.
So you set goals like even like you have a monthly goal that you want to get to. You ever get to the end of the month and you're like, it's gonna be a long weekend.
A long weekend. Yep, I've done that a couple of times. Yes. Yeah. Or looking ahead a little bit, I'm like, all right, there's 4 days left, and I got to get 65 miles in, so I plan it out that way. But especially now that races are coming back. Yeah. It'll be a little bit more planning involved in that. But, before it was getting a little bad, and I was like, all right, I got to do 40 this weekend or something,
Yeah. But that's some, like, serious long-term dedication to, like you're definitely putting that front and center as a big part of your life.
Right. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of joy in it for you. So, yeah, that's really cool. How about diet? Is diet a significant part of how you think about things?
This is like my running pace. I'm horrible at that too.
Yeah.
So I try to eat pretty good. I'm a PE health teacher, but I'm not on like a strict like diet of anything.
Right.
So.
What grade do you teach?
Elementary school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This is my second year teaching elementary school. The 15 years before I was at high school.
Do the kids have any idea like how long?
Yeah, I have a few. So a part of that 100-day running club we were talking about a little bit ago. There's a couple parents that are in that running club, so they've told their kids,
okay.
you know, and
Right.
and I have a girl that's in 5th grade actually, and she's going to run the Antietam beer mile 5K race they have. She's not doing the beer mile.
Yep.
She's doing the 5K. But so she asked me, she said, well, how fast can you run that? And I was like, it'll probably be a little under 18 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
She goes, oh no, I'm gonna run like 23 or 24. And I was like, if you run 24, that's great.
Yeah.
And then the next day she came in, she challenged me to a mile race, and she goes, I think I can beat you. I can run like 7:30, 8 minutes. And I'm like, it's going to be close.
Oh, man.
You know,
yeah.
But so yeah, some of my kids know that I run and run pretty far. They don't understand how far 100 miles
Right.
is, but they understand.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like Sally. You know, when we drive to Baltimore
Right,
and come
exactly.
back, that's a run for him.
that's how far we could go. So yeah, so it's pretty cool. Like when after the 100 miler, my principal made an announcement. And so the kids all said
wow,
congratulations and stuff for me. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. The kids kind of understand it and they get it, and they're excited about it. So
That's really neat. That's cool that your principal does that.
mm-hmm.
Kind of recognizes that.
Yes, yeah.
You have any shoes that are like your favorite? You know, a brand that you kind of stick with?
I wear Brooks
Okay.
when I run on the road
Mm-hmm.
and train. And then I actually just bought a pair, and I used it for JFK on the canal of the Saucony Endorphin Pros.
Okay.
So I wore those when I changed onto the towpath, and
Yep.
then I wore those in Rehoboth for a half marathon in December.
I guess you're pretty happy with them.
Yeah, they were pretty good. And then on the trails, I run in ultras.
Okay.
So a little bit of everything.
Which ultras?
The Superior.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's what I
All right.
ran in the first part of JFK,
Yep.
and then I switched them out, and then that's what I ran Fire on the Mountain in before and stuff.
Okay.
So 3 different brands, whatever works, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, especially when you're switching terrain
Right,
like that. So,
right.
Yeah, makes sense. We've talked about this a little bit, but curious, you know, what your kind of overall answer would be. You like running by yourself? You like running with others? What's your take on that?
I like to run by myself.
Yeah.
Especially before when there were a ton of races there. When I was running in, I guess, 2017, 18, 19, I was probably doing 25 to 30 races a year.
Yeah.
So that was my time to run with other people. You know,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
But other than that, I like to run by myself.
So training, you're solo, but when you're racing,
Yep. It
you're
feels
in the
like
midst
I'm
of-
part of the
right.
community and
Yeah.
running and stuff. Now
well, if you're doing that many races, then you're with people. Quite
right.
a bit,
It was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had talked about it before, but if somebody called me and asked me to go running, I usually go running with them and help them out or whatever. I had a buddy, Kevin, who used to live in Deep Creek. He would drive down, and I'd do speed work with him, so he could. Kevin Kuzo.
Okay, I'm from Deep Creek. So
Okay.
Yeah. I know the name,
he
but
actually lives in Frederick now. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But so he would come down and we'd go I'd do pace work with him, so I'd pace him and stuff on the rail trail and on the track at Williamsport. But yeah, most of the time I just like to run by myself, get out there and go run.
And you had said that you used to kind of put some music in. You don't do that anymore?
No, maybe about the first year or two.
Yeah.
I ran with music, and then I just got tired of charging it, adding new songs, making sure I had everything, and then I just started running without music, and now I love it. It's my time to think, figure things out.
Well, that's what some people who don't run at all, like that's one of the questions I ask is like, what are you thinking about
Right,
for that
right.
whole time? Like how can you think that much? How is this even possible?
Right.
So yeah, just if you want, your mind can just wander.
I'm so weird. I don't know if you're this way or not, but when I go out and run just a training run or just go run every day, I'm just running and I'm thinking about like daily life problems, issues, whatever else is going on. But when I race, I only think about running and finishing. So it's weird. It's not like something I do on purpose.
Yeah.
It's like a switch goes off and I just go right into race mode and just try to go.
Yeah.
But
cool. Yeah. So with all this running that you've done, and especially how you describe the running that you've done, I'm amazed that you haven't talked about it, but is overtraining ever been a problem or injuries or anything like that?
I got a bad knee maybe a year or two into it. I say a bad knee. I don't know. It was never diagnosed with anything.
It hurt.
It hurt, right? So I went to the doctors. It hurt like when I slept. It was kind of weird.
Yeah.
He advised me to take 3-4 weeks off. So I took 2 weeks off and started running again, and it hurt. I got a cortisone shot in my knee, and then I never had issues again.
Wow.
Yeah. So I knock on wood.
Yeah.
I've been fairly healthy.
Because when you're describing like, oh, I do like, I forget which one, maybe it was the 100-mile race, and then, but I want to keep that everyday thing.
That streak a lot, yeah.
And you go out and run again. And then I'm assuming, and then the next day,
yeah.
So like your body is not.
It's not
resting.
really resting very much.
Like
right,
how have you
right.
been able to do that and not get injured?
Yeah,
It was amazing.
I had plantar fasciitis.
Do you understand
once.
that that's amazing?
No, people. I don't. I just run. It's not.
Yeah.
But I had plantar fasciitis once for like a month, and then I changed my shoes, and it went away.
Okay.
But I've been pretty lucky not to have overuse.
That's great.
Or any bad injuries or anything.
And how old are you?
39.
39.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I remember 39. 39 was pretty good with running. So yeah, I'm 49. So I'm battling all sorts of stuff. Now,
right.
But yeah.
Right.
But I'm not putting in the miles you are. So, do you have? So it is interesting. You're day in, day out. You're going out. So one of the things that I like doing and I really enjoy about running is I run up in the watershed a lot. And one of the things I really like is the fact that there's certain routes I run during every part of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I know those routes really well. And I know the woods well. And you get to experience that place in winter, which is like really cool.
Right.
Or like we're just about to get into spring and everything's going to smell and feel and look different. And so I love running at different times of year. Do you have a particular time of year that you love running for whatever reason, or is it just
it's going to sound crazy because everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I like running in the winter.
Yeah.
So now I prefer it to be light in the winter. So
okay.
I usually try to run early in the morning. Now that it's getting a little lighter around 6-ish, right? So it's a little better.
Well, that's going to change.
I know, in like 3 days, right? But so in the winter, I like being cold. Well, my best races have been when it's been 32 degrees, 33 degrees.
And you've always kind of felt that way?
Yep.
Yeah.
Always. I run warm, so I like running in the winter better than summer.
Yeah, when I was younger, I loved the heat, hated the cold, just in general.
Right.
And so then even when I started, I didn't run when I was younger. I started like mid-30s. But when I started running, I still loved the heat and the sweat just made I feel like I'm working hard, all that kind of stuff. Now, I love winter running. As you know, like after 10, 15 minutes, you're good
warm.
To go.
Right.
You're like super comfortable.
Exactly. I
And
think
it's
in the
perfect.
summer it just drains you.
Yes.
It like you said, it feels good to sweat. It feels good to get out there. But after, when you're done, you're just drained.
Yeah. The older I get, the more that happens too. Like the heat just takes it out of you.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, in the winter, if you dress right, you're good to go after 10 or 15 minutes, and it feels pretty darn good.
We had in January we had that week where it was like really, really cold. I went running in Williamsport. It must have been a week or two after the ice and stuff that we had because the towpath was still icy. So I had to go out onto the road. Oh. So one of the ladies in the running group posted on Facebook that she just saw Adam Lowe running through Williamsport and he was wearing shorts. And it felt like 6 degrees outside. Yeah. I was like, well, what else was I going to wear? Right. I'm running. Like, you don't wear pants when you run. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well let's talk about some of these races.
Okay. So
you're the one that I heard of you through was the C&O 100-miler. So 100 miles. What was the time on that? Do you remember what
15 hours, 32 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, you probably remember every minute of that. So yeah, talk about that race. What was it like?
So before I signed up for the race, I did a 12-hour virtual race where you had to run.
Yeah, so some runners will know what this is, but people who aren't runners will be like, What the heck is a virtual race? You have like a little avatar that's running along? Like, what is a virtual race?
So because of COVID, this group had a 12-hour virtual race, and it meant you can run the race anywhere you wanted to. Right. So you had to do a 5-mile loop and then load your data on Strava, email it to them, and check in on Zoom.
Okay.
So I went down to the towpath in Williamsport, and I set up in the back of my Jeep. I set up my laptop, and I had everything I needed, and I just went out. When it started, I ran my first 5-mile loop, came back, checked in on Zoom, everything, shut everything down, went back out by myself. So I ended up doing 70 miles that day.
Wow.
After 35, Katie came and paced me for 5, and then I sat there. We ate lunch for like an hour, and then I went back out. So after doing that race, Andy Mason from the Herald Mail, I think it is, he called me and he wanted to do a story on me. And I said, man, sports must be really slow right now because of COVID. So I agreed to it. And so he did the nice story on me there. And then Pink, Mike Spindler, the JFK race director, saw it. And he asked me if I wanted to run JFK for his racing team.
Oh, nice.
So before that, I said, okay, so that took some talking to because I wasn't sure for some reason if I was ready for the 50-miler yet. Mm-hmm. It was just a confidence thing. I'd never ran that far before at one time.
Right.
So I got talked into it to do the 50-miler. The 100-miler was on my radar, but I decided I would only do it if I did okay or pretty good at JFK.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I got into the 100-miler. Was just a confidence thing again. I never ran that far before, and I wasn't sure how well I'd do.
Yeah, again, you're just like, who knows?
Right. It's the same way
book,
as most people. If they run a 5K or a 10K, they might be scared of the marathon still. Mm-hmm. Not know if they're ready for it. So this is just as kind of the same jump for me.
Yep.
So after running 6:50, what did I run the first year? 6:55 at JFK. Mm-hmm. I was talked into that. I was ready for the 100-miler. So now I'm getting ready for the 100-miler in April. So it was actually on my birthday last year. So I turned 39 on the day of the race.
Wow.
That was a good birthday present,
yeah.
Right? So you want me to talk about the race now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Good. Okay.
Heck
So the race is 3 loops. You start at Camp Mannequin. I don't know. There's a camp somewhere. I can't think of the name. And you run down this huge mountain, which I wasn't expecting because I never do any race research because that's how I am. So you run down this big mountain, and then you have to go onto the towpath. And the first loop's a 40-mile loop. So you go out 10 miles, and then you go back to where you started, mm-hmm. and then you go back out the other way 10, and then back. Okay.
Gotcha. Yep.
And then when you come, then you have to go back up this mountain and check in, and that's your first 40-mile loop.
Wow.
And then after you go back down again, and then you only do 5 the one way, back is 10, and then out, so that's a 30-mile loop. So you do a 40, a 30, to 30. After 70 miles, you can have a pacer.
Okay.
So the first 70, you're on your own or you're with other people in the race.
Yeah. And people are going every direction.
Yeah.
At some point, you're like,
I
don't know what lap and what direction I'm going.
Yeah. So we get there, and I had a plan going into it. I figured I would run for 5 miles, and then I'd walk for a half mile.
Yep.
That was my plan going in. I knew if I could stick to that, I could beat my 2 goals. My first goal was to finish. You have 30 hours to finish. I was like, I can do 100 miles in 30 hours.
Yeah.
Again, I go into it. I'd never going this far before. I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
So my second goal was to beat 24 hours. So to finish under 30, or my B goal was 24 hours. My C goal, which only a couple people knew, was to break 20 hours. That was like, if everything goes well, I'd figure I could break 20 hours.
Right.
So again, 5 miles of running, a half mile of walking. I figured that would pace me pretty good and I'd get there. So of course we get up to the start line and I get competitive. And then I see Mike Wardian, who comes and talks to me, and he stands right next to me at the race. So then, so I'm like, this is like the greatest ultra runner, at least I think so anyway.
Wow.
And I've run with him a few other times before. So I get to running with him, and we're running along, and we get to mile 5, and he doesn't stop the walk, so I don't stop the walk, you know? So I just ran with him for about 13, 14 miles at the beginning of the 100-miler, and then he had to make a bathroom stop. So I kept going. I figured he'd pass me in no time. Right. He never did. He stayed behind me the rest of the way. But so we're going out. I finally caught up with another guy near the end of the first 40 mile lap there. So I was in, I guess, second or third place. We were kind of tied after the first 40. So we climb the mountain up again. I go up there.
What are we talking with this mountain? What, like 500 feet, 1,000 feet?
Nah, I don't. Right. It's
a climb.
It's pretty bad. Yeah, it's a climb. Yeah.
Are you running it, or are you like
I walked,
hiking it?
Hiked it. Yeah. So it's a hiking.
So it's
a hiking.
Yeah, it's pretty serious grade.
So we get up there, and Katie, she's my crew chief for this, so she's got everything I need ready. Chug a little bit of a beer, get some carbs back in me, and then back down the mountain. So I caught up to Nick, who was in second again, and he was doing 2-mile run, and then he was going to walk for a minute. So I was like, all right, that seems like a good plan. I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
So I did that with him for like 2 or 3 cycles, the walking part with him. And then I was like, I still feel pretty good. I'm going to run. So he walked, and I was like, I'm just going to keep running. I'm sure you'll see me later, but I'm going to keep going. So I kept going. I get to about mile 50. I still felt great. I felt like I was there in about 7.5 hours. So not too far from at that point, my 50-mile PR. So I felt great, and I'm just going to keep on going. So it was a beautiful day. I think it was 45, 50 degrees, maybe a little warmer, but
pretty
good. It was, so
pretty
I
optimal.
was able to stay hydrated.
Not much wind, or
no, it was real nice during the daytime. We'll talk about the night in a minute. But I knew the whole time, I'm thinking, if I can just get to mile 70, I have pacers. You know, I have people who are going to run on me. And the whole time I'm thinking, all right, Katie's sitting out there. She's waiting for me. And then I had another pacer coming, Lauren Kramer. She's going to be there. She's waiting. I can't keep these people waiting. I got to keep going. So I get back up there, mile 70. I still feel pretty good. We go.
So just you say you feel pretty good. Like, what does that mean?
I know.
Exactly?
I guess, So,
like, does that mean there's things that hurt, but they hurt all the time when I'm kind of, you know, towards 3/4 through a race, or is it like literally like everything feels fine and normal?
So
like, what does it mean to feel good at that point?
So I think, like I said, I think at mile 50, I still felt normal. I mean, so
which is pretty,
So the pace for me was obviously a lot slower than what I'm used to running. I think my average pace was 9:19 or 9:20 or something for the 100, and that included like my breaks that I took at the top of the mountain and at some of the aid stations. So I was still trying to hold around 8:15, 8:30 pace. So I figured if I could do that, I was still moving. You know, like you said, everything's getting tired. It's sore a little bit, but the mechanics are still there, and you can still run. You know, kind of normally. So to me, that's feeling good. You know, I'm still
it's all
feeling good.
At
Right,
that point,
right.
So.
I'm feeling pretty good. So, and then come back down. So Katie paced me for the first 5 miles. So miles 70 through 75, somewhere around there. And then Lauren picked me up and ran the rest of the race with me. And she took care of whatever I needed. She got me at the aid stations and gave me bottles or whatever I needed. We got to mile 90, and I had talked about that's the point where everything got hard. That's when the legs were like, hey, we're done. This is we're not doing this anymore. I was at that last aid station. Well, I guess the second to last aid station, and I could have just stayed there for a few hours. If I didn't have a pacer, I probably would have stayed there for a while.
So when you hit that kind of moment, like, what's going on in your head? Because you know that moment's going to come.
Right.
But then it comes, and then there's this game you play, or like, how would you describe it?
So to me, so I was still in second place at the time. And when I got there, at the camp when I was at mile 70. They were like, if you have a great 30 miles, you can catch that guy.
Yeah.
So I'm coming down the mountain thinking, hey, I can win this thing.
Wow.
I lost by like 45 minutes.
Right.
So it wasn't even close. So I'm going down there, and then I got to mile 90, and then I asked him, I was like, well, hey, how far is that guy ahead of me? Because now it's dark. Mm-hmm. We're running with headlamps on. I don't know when he would have went by me, and they're like, oh, he's way gone,
Right.
So then that kind of hit a little bit, but
that little bit of motivation is like, throw that out.
Right. You can't use that now. But I think when you're that far in a race, same thing as if you're at mile 23 of a marathon or mile 5 of a 10K, the majority of the work's done. Right. So now you got to find it in your heart to go, to just decide, okay, I got to finish.
Yeah.
And at that point, walk or run, it's 10 miles. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and it's like if you're not like muscle tear or a bone, like the pain you feel, you're like, this is the same pain. It's gonna feel the same pain 2 miles from now.
Exactly.
So if I can just keep moving, it's the same pain.
Yeah.
So why not just keep going? Right?
When I ran a different run with Mike Wardy, and we were running together, and he like all of a sudden started speeding up, and I was like, "Are you feeling good now? Like what's going on?" And he goes, I was just always told if it hurts going slow, or it's going to hurt going fast or something. I don't, you know what I mean? So he just sped up. He was like, it is what it is. It's going to hurt. So it's the same thing. I got to that point, and I just had 10 miles, and then I could stop.
Yeah.
And then I could be done. So we ran to the next aid station. And actually, when I got to that mile 90 aid station, the guy in third caught up to me. So then he passed me. So now I'm in third, and I'm thinking, all right, if I can just stay with him, I can still get second. So I actually caught and passed him again. And then at the next aid station, I stopped. I needed like a mental break, and he kept going. And I was like, okay, third is good enough.
Right.
Because, at that time I'm thinking I can still break 16 hours.
Yeah.
And that wasn't anywhere near my C goal.
Right.
I'm still way ahead of that.
Yeah.
It did cross my mind a couple of times in the race, like, hey, I could crawl to the finish line and finish. So like this is really
plan D.
Right, plan D. Right, here we go, just crawl. But at one point, it started raining, started getting colder, so we stopped and put trash bags on and finished. My watch, this is like my favorite story from the race. So my watch actually died at like mile 94.
Oh,
so now I'm running without a watch, but I have a pacer, Lauren Kramer, who's a coach in Hagerstown and a great runner.
Yeah.
Hopefully in 2 weeks she's going to go sub 3 in the marathon. And then I'm actually going to pace her in the last 20 miles this year of the Canal 100.
Okay.
So a little payback, hopefully. But so she's running with a watch, and the plan is to run for 2 miles and to walk for a quarter mile to half mile, whatever I can do.
Just pause for a second. So your watch dies. And you're a numbers guy.
Yeah, mentally I was done.
And that could wreck you.
Yes.
It can, like, even if you can still go, I can put one foot in front of the other, like, it can just mess your world up because it's just a really big kind of change that far in.
If I didn't have her running with me with a watch, it would have been a huge mental, I would have been unfocused.
You knew her, your confidence was in her, and you're like, okay, she can be my watch, essentially.
So she was going to tell me every 2 miles we were running, and then we were walking a quarter mile to half mile.
Yeah.
So, but here's the problem. She's a coach. And she lied to me.
Oh.
So this is the joke I always tell her, like, all right, so wait till this year. So we get it. I'm like, that feels way longer than 2 miles. And she's like, I know, I'm sorry. And then so she did that once or twice. And it's what I needed, though. I needed to be done. I needed somebody to do that to me. So it is perfectly fine. It worked out. But
I mean, that's probably part of why you wanted her there.
Exactly. Right. Yep. So we go back up that hill, and I said, hey, there's no one behind me, right? Like I still was in third, and she goes, no, you're good. And I was like, then we're walking up this hill. And I don't care how slow it is. But so we walked up that hill, and then we got to that last part, maybe about 100 meters left or so. Katie was back there again. Mm-hmm. So her and I finished together, and I was like, we got to run up the hill. So I ran up the hill, and then we were done. And here's another great story. So we're sitting there, and it's raining. It's cold. I'm starting to get out of it, like all the adrenaline's coming in at once, and it's my thoughts are getting cloudy, And so a lady comes up to me and she goes, "What size T-shirt do you want?" And I just looked at her and I was like, "What?" I didn't understand what the question was. She goes, "What size T-shirt do you want?" And I just looked at her and I go, "I don't understand." Like it was pretty bad. I was already getting out of it. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was.
Do you think that's the most mentally exhausted you've ever been in a race, or have you hit that point? Yeah. It sounds like you were really.
Yeah, I was pretty out of it at that point.
I've heard of people who do like 100+ milers get into some weird mental states, and some of it I think is like kind of exhaustion you would think from running, but then some of it I guess is if you go on these longer ones, it's lack of sleep as well.
Right.
Can kind of do that too. And you get in these weird states, you start hallucinating. You ever hallucinate when you're running?
No, I have not. Luckily. Yeah.
Well, there's always time,
a chance,
right?
Yep. So so I was pleasantly surprised. That's the another thing I love about running is you put yourself out there, and I could have had a horrible day. I could have did not finished. Going out that fast and running with Mike and running with a couple of the other guys that I was running with at the beginning. But to me, you don't know unless you try. So I was happy after the fact that I threw my plan out the window.
Right.
I had a perfect plan of running 5 miles and then walking and I threw that out the window, and then I ran a 15:32, and I had no idea I could do that. So.
Yeah, that's sounds like it's a common part of really good runners too. Is which has to be a balance. Like you have a plan, but you have to be willing to adjust very quickly.
Right.
And sometimes adjustments. Anybody who runs a lot will know, like if your watch dies, that can really mess with your head.
Right.
If you rely on that. And so being able to adjust from something like that is
and at that point of the race, it was dark. And you're on the towpath, so there's mile markers, but it's dark and I think I've run that area a couple times, but I'm not very familiar with that part of it. So it's kind of a new part of the towpath.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have known like exactly where I was.
Yeah.
At the time, so it was very good to have her going, all right, we got 4 miles left, or we got 3 miles left, or instead of me trying to guess.
Yeah.
Because I would have been like, I bet it's 50 feet from here.
Right.
That was what I would have said the whole 6 miles. So,
so with a race like that, what I mean is like these really big ones for you. It sounds like you kind of answered this, but so you're not doing a lot of mental preparation for the race ahead of time.
You mean like course preview?
Well, it could be that. It's kind of a broader question. Like maybe it's that, but then some other people I've heard people talk about for their training, but also for their race, they have to have a why. And the why has to be like big enough that when they're in that moment, that reason why they're running will get them through that. And people talk about like that takes a lot of mental preparation to figure out what is that why, and then you kind of use that as your training. But then when you get into the race, it's like really important. Is that a thing for you or not a thing for you?
This is going to sound really simple, and I don't know if it's just like my competitive nature, but like ever since I ran that first 10K, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
The only thing I knew was like when they said go, I was supposed to get to the finish line as fast as I could. Like that's so it's so dumb, right? But like that's what I use when I'm running, and I go, okay, I'm supposed to run from A to B as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I do have like reasons. Like I do enjoy coming in near the top of races.
That's competitive nature
that's
there.
Being competitive, right?
Yeah.
So, but in as I'm running, I'm doing training runs. Sometimes I put myself into a race.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I go, okay, well, here we are at last year preparing for JFK. I would do it all the time. I'm like, all right, you got 20 miles left. How are you going to run these 20 miles? Mm-hmm. So I definitely put myself into those situations mentally beforehand.
Yeah.
A lot of times before, maybe a couple years ago, I would do that a lot, like doing tempo runs for marathons and stuff, and just kind of get a feel for the I guess the tempo of the race.
Yep.
But these is going to sound maybe a little weird, but I've done 250 milers and the 100 milers, so it's all new to me still.
Right.
I've just been lucky enough to be good at it so far, but still trying to figure those races out.
So have you ever had a DNF, did not finish?
Nope. The closest I came
That's amazing.
The closest I came to was that 50K that I talked about earlier, where I was about to get in the race director's car. That would have been my first.
So, and for people that are watching and listening that maybe don't do a lot of racing, I mean, just doing that many races and running that much, and some of these you're doing are not that, like the JFK, right? That's a tough race, or the Cat 50. How many races have you done that besides, like, so you got the Catoctin 50, the JFK, or and then Fire on the Mountain, which we'll talk about. What are the ones you have that are like can have that rough terrain on them?
The only other one was probably that Frozen Heart 50K that I did.
Yeah.
So that's like 7 or 8 races.
Easily something bad can happen in those, right?
Not the year that I won Fire on the Mountain, but the year before. I think I was at mile 22 of 32, 31, and I had to jump over like a tree stump or something. So I jumped over it, and when I landed right on like a sharp rock that I couldn't see.
Yeah.
So I thought my foot was broken. I took a few steps and had to stop and massage it out and feel for it to make sure I was okay. And I ended up finishing, but I ended up going to the doctors for it and got X-rays to make sure it was okay. It wasn't
then the
broken.
next day you went.
Yeah, I went run. So, but like you said, Fire on the Mountain, JFK on the Appalachian Trail, Catoctin especially. That course is brutal.
Yeah, and just to give people an idea. So I was up running in the watershed, which is where the Catoctin 50K is run. And the Appalachian Trail, like, these are similar terrain. So I was up there, and they had a like national mountain biking championship up there because they have some like world-class stuff up there for mountain biking. And so there was this guy up there. I was just a normal run during the week. And so I stopped at the end. I was stretching, and this guy came up on a mountain bike, and he asked for directions to kind of get back because he wasn't from there. He was from Colorado. And we were just talking a little bit. I said, "Oh, this is really cool. You're coming to the East Coast and doing some racing." And he said, "Yeah, I don't know about this. This is different than like out west. The trails are nice and smooth. This East Coast stuff, I'm not coming back for another one of these." And it was like it's really rough. Like, it's very different. It's very difficult, very technical. So those kinds of runs are not easy to do.
Yeah, when I did Cacapon 12-hour challenge, that's similar to Catoctin. So
really?
the course, it's a 5-mile loop, but it was pretty similar to the terrain. So
So talk about that for a minute. Just so 5-mile loop, 12-hour challenge. What does that mean?
So at the Cacapon 12-hour challenge, you basically at the beginning start at 7 a.m. and the race ends at 7 p.m.
And you just
you do as many 5-mile loops as you can. So after your 5-mile loop, you come back and you can go to your personal aid station if you want. You bring the last couple of years you've brought your own food and aid and stuff, and then when you're ready, you just go back out on your next 5-mile loop. And you do as many. Oh,
so you can take as long as you want.
Yeah, you can take breaks.
There's no like if you go over 20 minutes, you're
nope.
Done.
You can run a 5-mile loop. You can
do
come back, take
loop,
take
do
a
an
11-hour
break.
Yep, take a 6-hour nap, and then go back out if you wanted. So I actually did the race with 2 of my buddies.
Okay.
And I told you while we talked the other day, but. So the first loop we go out, we're 2 road marathon guys, and we go out on this trail and we're sprinting up the mountains and stuff, not realizing, hey, if we finish this thing, we're going to do this 11 more hours.
Yeah.
So we go out. I'm pretty sure we set the course record for a 5-mile loop on the first one. And then we just suffered. It's in the middle of the summer, so it's 90+ degrees by the end of the day.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough. I did 47 miles that day. Yeah, it got pretty hot, and it was
So it was
rough,
all during the day then.
Yeah, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or something.
Ooh, man, that's pretty rough. So, since you've done both, and you've done a lot of both, how would you describe mentally the difference? And I don't mean like in length. I mean just if you're going to do just a 5 or 10 mile run, even, but the difference between doing. So the JFK 50 has both, right? You're doing trail, and then you're also doing you're on the canal for that, or
you're on the
on roads,
Appalachian Trail for about 15 and a half, and then you run a marathon on the towpath, and then you have 8.4 on the roads.
Okay. So talk about just mentally the different approach between the trail and the the towpath maybe.
Okay, yeah. So on the trail, Appalachian Trail, Catoctin, Cacapon, any trail you go on, it's 100% mental focus. I can't take my eyes off the trail for a second, right. Or I'm going to trip and fall.
Especially if you're moving fast.
Right, trying to, yeah. So if for me, it's hard. When I ran Fire on the Mountain for the first time, it was hard for me. That was one of my first ever trail races where it wasn't really marked by ribbons and stuff like that. It was marked by the forest. So you have the tree blazers, the colors and stuff. Yep. So if you're on the red trail, you follow the red trees,
Yes.
But for me, if I look up trying to find a tree marker, I'm going to fall. Right. So you got to balance that, watching where you're putting your foot and watching the trees so you don't get lost.
So you're really dialed in, very focused on each placement of each foot.
Right, 100% focused on the steps and where you're putting your feet and where you're running down a hill. I'm a horrible trail downhill runner.
Okay.
I'm pretty good at the uphills. But when I run trail races, I get past going downhill, and then I just pass them right back up on the uphill. So I'm pretty bad at downhills, but I'm just way too careful. I'm just scared I'm going to fall. So, but then when you go on the road, it's just you can just run, or on the towpath, you can just put your feet wherever they go. It doesn't. You can get lost in your thoughts pretty easily out there. And it won't cost you anything.
You almost want to do it, right?
Right.
Your body. When you do that much running, your body kind of has this rhythm that is almost subconscious.
Right.
And you almost want to get lost in that.
Yes.
So you're not thinking that much about your running. You're just going.
Yes, that's the easy way to do it.
180 degrees different than the trail stuff.
If you're on the trail, when I'm on the trail, I have to think exactly where I'm putting my feet every single time.
Yeah.
And that's all you can concentrate on.
Yeah, which I mean, it is a different challenge, right? But they both have their advantages. I mean, with the trail, you have to do that.
Right.
So you can't think a lot about other stuff like, I wonder what the next mile is going to be. You aren't thinking about that at all. You're just thinking about like the next foot placement.
Right.
Whereas on the road, you can let your thoughts go into, like, if you're not disciplined enough, like, oh man, I feel like this now. How am I going to do 4 miles from now?
Right.
So that's the challenge there, right? To not start getting those negative thoughts on the road, whereas on the trail, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Probably. Right.
It's
a little bit different.
I think it's going to sound maybe a little strange, but like I think time goes by differently too when you're on the trail compared to the road.
Yep.
Usually, like you said, for me, when I run on the road, I probably look at my watch way too much, like a lot. But when I'm on the trail, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'll hear it beep and I'll go, wow, a mile already went by, and you're just concentrating on what you're doing. So it's a pretty big difference running between the two. I like to get a good balance of it. I do most of my running on the roads though, or the towpath.
Because you said you like to run fast.
I like to run faster. I like to get it in, get it done.
Yeah.
But last year I did go up to the Appalachian Trail a couple of times and run in preparation for JFK. And then we did training runs for Fire on the Mountain. So we went up there and ran a few times in Green Ridge.
So you've put some miles in on trails, like even outside of the races. You've done some, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And we talked ahead of time. You've never run into any critters out there.
No.
Yeah.
I've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
I guess as far as that goes, but no bears or.
Yeah. So
So
I got a couple stories along those lines. One of them was Gambrel Park.
Okay.
So I was doing the Yellow Trail, and I parked at so if you're going up to the tea room, and there's the parking lot before you get to the top, parking lot on the right. So I was parked there and just started on the Yellow Trail, which kind of goes up the hill there. So I wasn't more than, maybe 100, 200 yards into it, just getting started. Not me. I'm not moving fast anyways. So I'm on that hillside. I come around the corner, and like maybe 25 to 30 yards ahead of me, a bear is coming kind of from the road and coming down, comes across the trail and just stops and just looks at me. And of course, I just stop. And I'm like, okay, I think we're okay.
Right.
And then right in front of the bear, a little cub comes out. And I'm like, and I've listened to tons of escape the bear attack stories. I'm thinking, this is how it ends, right here, And so I think about like trying to get my phone out. I'm like, I'm not moving. And finally she just kind of walked down the hill and left me alone. But I thought this is it, because you never want to startle a bear.
Right.
And if you do, make sure it's not one with a cub. And I was like, I just broke all those rules right there.
Exactly.
I think probably what saved me it was a gambrel, so I'm guessing that bear sees people like all the time. So
right.
It wasn't nearly as freaked out as I was.
We had last year I went up and did some coursework on the Fire on the Mountain course, and the day before I was going, someone posted on Facebook that they saw a bear on the red trail right where I was going to go do the coursework. Really? So I was a little nervous, but I never saw anything out there. So
yeah, I mean that bear that I saw I used to live in like Deep Creek, and there's a lot of bears out there, and I worked in areas where I saw bears, and most of them, as soon as they see you or they smell, they just take off.
Right.
So this one was like way more calm than most of them. So I guess that was a good thing.
Yeah.
But and then the Cat 50, it's kind of famous or infamous for rattlesnakes.
Okay.
And so there's one there that they've actually named, and it was actually the year I ran, on the back of the shirt they have a rattlesnake on there, and its name is Seymour. And so it's in a particular spot there, and I've seen him like 3 or 4 times, running, and I know where he is, and so I'm kind of like coming around a turn, like, this is where Seymour usually is. I need to be careful. I never had any problems. And then have you ever done Bob's Hill? Do you know where that is?
I know where it is, but I haven't done that. No.
There's good many rattlesnakes up there, so I've seen a few up there, but I've seen a few things out there, but never had any problems with anything. So, but so when you're racing, how do you look at people that you're racing with? Are they your opponents? Or are they like fellow competitors? Or like, how do you look at the people that are around you?
I don't, since like in running, when we're running, it's not like track where you can like kind of block somebody in a lane or something. So there's no defense to play here. So if I go out and do what I can do, I usually use them as help. I can feed off of them, or if let's say I'm in 10th place and I can see somebody in front of me, I can go catch that person. Mm-hmm. So if I do, I'm not going to go up to them and say anything to them, but I use them as motivation in order to help myself move up.
You'll kind of see, I might be able to pick this guy off over this next hill or
exactly.
Something like that. And then you find the next one.
And kind of work your way up there. So here's a pretty good story. When I ran my marathon PR in 2018 in Newport News, the One City Marathon, I ran a 2:44. So when I got to about mile 21, there was a lady who was trying to Olympic qualify.
Okay.
And at that time, the time was 2:45 or 2:44:59. They had to be under. So now I'm running with her, and she has a pacer who's about 20 yards in front of her, and he must have been a 2:20 guy because he's running backwards, and he's just screaming at her, yelling at her, encouraging her for 5 miles. And you know what I did? I just pretended he was yelling at me. And that's what I did.
Wow.
And then so with about a mile to go, he looked at me and he goes, "If you can go, just go." Because I was running with her, and she's getting screamed at. At one point, I thought she was crying at mile 24, and I was like, "Hey, you're doing great. Just go on. Like we're in this together now."
Yeah.
And then at one point, he just looked at me. He's like, "Look, you need to go.
Yeah.
Like if you can go, go." So I took off.
Yeah.
I just imagined he was yelling at me for 5 miles. It didn't bother me any.
Yeah.
So it was great coaching for him.
Right. Yeah.
But I look at all those guys. Like I race against people now that I know, and I've known, from Strava, or I've met them at other races and stuff, and we're buddy, and we get out there and we go run, and if I beat them, I shake their hand. If they beat me, I shake their hand. It doesn't really matter. So
yeah, that's cool, because I mean there is. I mean, it depends. I have heard of like some pretty serious rivalries between racers, between runners, but there's also that, like, I think. Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't know if you feel this way, but I think a lot of people do, where your main competitor is kind of yourself.
Right.
You know what you think you can do. And like you say, you're setting goals that if you can do this, you kind of just beat the last kind of version of you in the last race that you did that in, and so that can be pretty competitive as well. Is that kind of that within, right?
Yeah. So when I set my goals, I usually set them on times.
Okay.
Not really places. I have a couple races where I'll set. Okay, I want to be, top 5 or top 3 or something. But you can't control who comes to the race, so that's a tough goal to beat.
Do you know a lot of times, like when people show up, you're like,
oh yeah, I can't beat that guy anymore.
Yeah.
So or like, hey, I can usually run with him. It's like, all right, I'm gonna feed off of him, or I'm gonna say, hey, let's stick together, let's run.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of races now where I'll see the same guys, and I'll go, all right, I could be able to run with him.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like a friendly competition.
Yeah. Now I think you said that you prefer either like, road running or like towpath, that kind of stuff, over the trail running, like if you could pick, right?
Right.
But you also said to me that you want to make the JFK 50 like an annual thing, right? So what's up with that?
I think the JFK has it's just, I don't know, it's the greatest ultra race in America, right? The longest.
It's got some amazing history,
right? And this one's going to be the 60th year for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it should be a pretty good event. But we talked about before, and I had started in 2010, and I've done every Marine Corps since. So now that I'm moving up in distance, I thought I could do the same thing with JFK and just kind of add it in there. Now, do I dislike the first 15 miles? Dislike might be a strong word, but I don't enjoy them very much.
You get through it.
I get through them, and then I, like this year, I got through them, and then I could get on the towpath and really run and let it go. But I plan on making it an annual thing as long as I can.
That makes sense. But in the world of like ultras, there's there's some races that are primarily trail, right? And you're not looking to do any of those, or are you?
Maybe eventually.
Yeah,
it's like we just talked about it before. It's a huge mental difference, and that's a long time to focus.
Yeah, although I'm wondering, have you talked to runners who have competed out west at all? Because, man, the trails out there are really different.
They're different than the ones we have here.
I haven't run a lot out there, but I've done a lot of backpacking out there, and they're the same trails that they're running on.
Right.
And they're sweet. They're really easy running for the most part. So, like, even if you're running up, there are these nice grades, and I don't know. It's not like our stuff here.
Trail.
Yeah, it's in my opinion, it's like way easier. So you should talk to somebody that does some of that stuff. Like I said, I haven't run the races, but I've backpacked some places where they've done it, and I'd love to run in some of those spots for sure. So, so let's talk about like just you've definitely touched on it a little bit, but we'll focus in on it, the running community. So like I said, I ran the Catoctin 50K, and in my training, like I did, I think probably 100%, 99% of my running was by myself.
Right.
And I didn't have any interest in community. It's not like, it's fine if people enjoyed it, but that wasn't my thing, you know? And so when I went to run the race, I was like, I'm just going to run this by myself, and I'm going to finish it by myself. And of course, that wasn't the case.
Right.
You know, like, it was the community was amazing. I didn't think I'd be saying anything about community when I was done, but the community was amazing. Like once I got like probably 30% of the way through, so not even 50%, you know, people were just running next to you and encouraging you and saying, "Oh, is this your first one?" "No way, this is your first one. Oh my gosh, you're doing great." And literally, like when we got to, there were 5 miles left. And I had a guy I work with said, "Hey, I'll show up and just try to cheer you on." And so I knew he was going to be at that spot. And I was like, I'm crawling into the back of his truck because my house is like 5 miles from there. I'm like, he's just going to take me home. I'm not doing this.
Right.
Like it was that mental thing. Like mentally, I was talking myself into like, that's what I was going to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And there was this one woman who was running next to me. And she said, "I've run this like 7 times. You're doing amazing." And I was like, okay, if I can just follow her,
Right.
maybe I can make it, you know? And that's what I did. And I just kind of followed her home,
Right.
essentially. And like, we got to the end, I can't remember her name now, gave her this big hug. She's like, you know, and it was this really cool thing. And so I got to like see that community. And it, like, the running community is amazing. So I don't know, you talk a little bit about like your experience with that.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences even during races. The biggest one that comes to mind is my second Boston. For me, it was in the 60s, so it was a horrible day. You know, it was hot, and of course I go out, I'm running way too fast anyway. First 10 miles, I get done mile 24, and I'm already walking and running, you know. I think I ran like a 3:15 or something that day. My buddy Kevin will make fun of me because Jimmy Johnson, the NASCAR race, he beat me in his first ever marathon or something. So shout out to Jimmy. Thanks, buddy. But we're getting ready to turn, and I got like mile 24. And this 65-year-old woman passes me. Yeah. And she goes, "You're doing great." Yeah. So I'm like, I'm sticking with her. Yeah. So we ran and walked together for two and a half miles, whatever it was, to the finish line. Someone you never expect to be able to help you out in a race. Yeah. And, you know, this lady comes up and encourages me, and I was like, all right, we're sticking together the rest of the way. So we walked and ran the rest of the way of that race together. You know, similar to that lady you were just talking about. Yeah. And then I've had people at aid stations in these longer runs that have gone above and beyond, you know, anything that they're supposed to do to help you out. For the 100 miler, so I'm pretty weird. Some people say, like, I chew gum when I run, all the time. Okay. So during the 100 miler, though, I use my last piece of gum and I didn't have any more. So I get to the aid station and I'm like, they have everything. Right. I mean, it's a Foley stock. They got bacon. Oh, wow. I've never had bacon during a race. Right. They got all these food, you know.
And just so people who haven't done these races understand, it's so much fun, right? Because that is one of the things, like, these people will crew these aid stations, and it can be competitive, like who has the most awesome aid stations, and races will even take on a bit of a reputation for what their stations are like. Right. And so it's a really big deal, and they get fun with it and creative because they're hanging out during the whole race. Right. So usually those people, they like each other anyways, and they're having a good time. So it's usually this kind of crazy atmosphere. It can be at some of the stations.
So at JFK, the Steeplechasers, they make like special cookies for everybody, and they have a huge, you know, 3 or 4 canopies, and they have a lot of people there. And like you said, they have a great time. Yeah, and that exists because of the community. Like, those people aren't just happen to get together. Like, they spend a lot of time together because of running. Smithsburg cross country team at mile 34, they have their tent, and they come, and their coach Ray Shriver dresses up as Santa Claus for Miracle at mile 34, whatever they call it.
Really?
So last year awesome. He was about a quarter mile up the trail, so he actually ran with me for about a quarter mile. So there's a pretty good picture of Ray and I running, but he's dressed as Santa Claus. That's awesome. So I ran with Santa Claus during JFK, so that was pretty cool. Very cool. And, you know, that sounds, you know, maybe it doesn't sound like anything to people out there, but, like, when you're at mile 34 of 50, and that puts a smile on your face. Yeah. You know, I'm 39 years old, and I'm smiling about Santa Claus because he's running with me. Yep. You know, that takes your mind off of any pain going on at the time. Yeah. So, like you said, that's part of that community. Yeah. But anyway, during that 100 miler, I get to that aid station. Like I said, it's fully stocked. They got bacon, they got rice, they got anything you would want. And I'm looking around like, does anybody have gum? Yeah. And this guy runs back to his car, gives me the gum from his car, and, you know, I don't have anything I'm like, well, you got to give me your name or something. I'll Venmo you later. You know, he's like, no, you're good. So, you know, but people like that, they'll go above and beyond. And
the people there, it's kind of, until you experience it, it's kind of hard to believe it. Like, they're literally there to do anything they can to help you succeed. Like, they really want to do that in that moment that you're there with them.
Maybe 2 years before I ran my first JFK, it was 60 degrees at the start. And then some storm came in, and it went down to like 25, 30 degrees.
JFK's running in November?
November, right. So my buddy Kevin ran it, and a couple other people I know ran it, and there were literally people at the aid stations that, like, took their long sleeve shirts off and gave them to runners so they wouldn't be cold, you know. And you, like, wow, now you're going to stand, you're going to be cold. You know, they don't care. They're out there. You know, they're there to support the runners, so they do whatever they can to do that. So, And then, just running, I try to, when I'm running, especially those big races like that, I try to encourage everybody that, we're going out and back. So we're passing people. During that 100-miler, I might have been on mile 80, and I'm passing somebody who's on mile 40, and I'm encouraging them just because, it puts a smile on their face, and they encourage me back, and we're just supporting each other, even though we're at completely different stages of the race. So, it's pretty big, the community part of it.
Yeah, and it is like you did a great job describing it, but experiencing it, it's hard to really put words to it.
It is, right.
But
so
it's a neat thing.
If you've never ran or been to a big city marathon, you got to get out there. When you're running, when you go run Boston or Marine Corps and there's thousands of people lining the streets and they cheer for you by bib number or guy with white shirt or guy with no shirt, you're doing awesome, and it's like, hey, they're talking to me. It gives you a little pep in your step, so it helps out a lot. Right, it does. Yep.
Yeah. So how about the what you might call like your support group when you're running these longer races? So there are the aid stations, but then you need people who are going to like actually support just you, like your team, right?
Right.
What does that look like? What does your team look like?
So my team for the last 3, I guess, big races. So JFK, the last 2, and then the Canal was Katie. Okay. So my girlfriend came out and she was my crew, my support crew. So for JFK, she went to, I think, 3 different spots after mile 27. And I gave her bags of stuff to bring to each aid station, and we had it down. I had pickle juice in there, I had recovery in there, drink, I had more gum, some goo, gels and stuff, and then I just grab that stuff and go. So it kind of takes a guessing game out of it. I use the aid stations as like more of like support if I need a quick drink of water, but I have my stuff too that I need.
So coming in at a certain place, she's going to have specifics for you.
Everything I could need
helps,
or
like
want.
Mentally,
right.
You can be thinking about that for the mile leading up to it, and that'll get you there knowing. Whatever it is, your favorite thing to eat or whatever it's going to be, you can kind of.
Yeah, like I know. Last year, I was thinking before I saw her at mile 38, I was like, all right, in 2 miles, I get potato chips.
Yes.
Like it just 3 or 4 Lay's potato chips. It's so great. That whatever you're looking forward to at that point, know it's going to be there. It's a big help.
And she'll make sure you have obviously your shoes that you need if you're at a phase or you're switching shoes out.
Yeah, the last 2 years. So at JFK, I switched out at mile 27. Yeah. And just switch from trail shoes right to.
If you're not switching shoes because you're going from like trail to road, if it's just all road, will you go through more than one pair? Or you just stick with
I'll
one?
just the 100-miler I changed every time I went back up to the aid station. So after 40, 30, and 30, just because I have the shoes and I was just worried about them breaking down. But if I'm doing a 50K or a marathon or something, I'm not changing shoes.
Right. Yeah. So you'd mentioned, and I can't remember his name now, but do you have any running heroes? You had mentioned one guy that you ran with.
Mike Wardian.
Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you consider him that or somebody else? Or
so most people, if they know what Mike Wardian has done, which is just some incredible things, running wise, and this is going to sound like a running geek, but on May 1st, he's going to start his trek across the country. So he's going to run from California to
I don't know that much about
Delaware.
Him,
so, he's going to run across the country.
Wow.
And then,
you said starting in Delaware?
No, starting in California, coming to Delaware. Yeah. So
where does he live?
Delaware, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But he's done a lot of stuff locally here. Or he might live in Virginia and have a house in Delaware. I don't know. Right. But I've run more than a few races with him, and I've done some runs with him. So I would say he's probably like my running hero. But to me, he's like a normal guy because I've had conversations with him and talked to him and stuff.
Right.
Real cool. But I would say he's probably the one that I look up to the most as far as like the ultra running world and stuff.
Ah, that's really cool. Yeah. That's nice to have somebody like that, especially that you can interact with, not just from afar, kind of a thing. So, very cool. So you said 39, right? Mm-hmm. So, and you've been running for a while, so you can kind of see yourself going through probably a few different phases of running a little bit. Have you thought much about how you think you're going to be running as you age, or you just kind of like in the moment, whatever comes. So you think about,
I think that's part of what I'm doing now is I'm kind of transitioning into the longer stuff. I don't think I'm going out and PRing in the marathon anymore at 2:44, you know? So if I can't go as fast, then I might as well go a little further. So I think that's kind of where like that 12-hour challenge that I did, the virtual race came from, and then the 50 milers and stuff. So yeah, going a little further now as I get older because some of the speed is gone, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I got you. Yep. Hey, were you paying attention at all to the Barkley Marathon?
Yeah, I was following on Twitter. Yeah.
I was looking, and I guess it just ended a few hours ago.
It ended this morning or something. This morning? Yeah,
Nobody finished.
I could definitely not do that race. I would get lost after 300 yards on the course, I'm sure, unless I was following somebody.
Yeah. For people who don't know, they should go check this out. It's gotten kind of famous now, so there's books about it, multiple documentaries. But I think the one that I saw first, which is a really good one, it's called the Barkley Marathons, the race that eats its young. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've seen that. But it's a pretty crazy race.
Yes.
And if you watch the documentary, it's pretty cool. The guy who sets the whole thing up, it's like there's a mystery as to how you register for the race. Like he doesn't even publicize how you can register for it. And you have to write an essay that's titled "Why I Should Be Allowed to Run in the Barkley," and you have to pay $1.60 application fee. Right.
That's how you get into the race. $1.60. So yeah, that's pretty good.
And I saw in the documentary you have to like bring a license plate or something.
Yeah, if you're a first time runner, I think you have to bring a license plate. And then I think I saw in there every year he has something different. Like the one year they had to bring him packs of like a 3-pack of white T-shirts. Okay. So he said now he has like 100 white T-shirts. So I have no interest right now in doing Barkley Marathon.
So people who run it are like world-class elite runners, and very rarely does someone finish it.
I think there's been 12 finishers in the 20
so
years
this year,
or something.
From what I saw, nobody finished it.
Yeah, nobody finished this year either.
It's a 100-mile race. He calls the 60 miles of it the fun run.
Right.
And on top of all of that, so you're running through the woods, and on top of all that, it's like an unmarked course, and he changes the course each year with little variations on it. And so, like if you watch the documentary, you see people like they get lost, or they get very close to finishing and then like go the wrong direction. It's just it's insane.
That would be me. I couldn't do it.
Like it's obviously, as you watch it, it is obviously a physical challenge, but also crazy mental challenge.
Right, a huge mental.
Yeah, but it's just a fun one to watch people kind of put themselves through.
Yeah.
You're not going through it yourself.
No.
So
that would be my first did not finish right there.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. But so there are some runs. So you ever heard of there's like this ultra grand slam, which is like a bunch of 100-mile races. I don't know how many people. A few people have run all of them in a year. You ever heard of that?
No.
I looked it up. I didn't know about this. I knew about like there's some of the runs in it are very famous. Maybe to a lot of people they're super famous, all of them, but I've only heard of a few of them. But like the Western States 100 is one that everybody hears about, right? But there's one that I wasn't aware of and it's I think the oldest ultra on the East Coast called the Old Dominion 100. Huh. You ever heard of that one?
No.
It's in Virginia.
Okay.
So yeah, I never heard of that one. I'm curious about it. I want to check it out. And then another one I'd heard of was the Leadville 100, which is in Colorado.
Right.
I'm never going to do a 100-mile race. I'm not going to.
Right.
That's not going to happen. But they do have, I think they have like a 50K or 25K up there too.
Okay.
In Leadville. So that would be kind of cool to do.
Yeah. Those trails are a little nicer than the trails here,
well,
probably.
I've been to Leadville.
Okay.
And I've done some, like I said, some hiking and stuff around there. And the parts I saw, way better.
Right.
I'm sure there's parts that are rough, but a lot of it is I think a lot better. So might be something you check out sometime. You ever heard of the Mont Blanc Ultra? It's like in France.
No.
You got to check that out.
Maybe I have.
Yeah. That one I think is probably pretty gnarly.
Okay.
But it's like 100 miles, 32,000 foot elevation gain. So it's pretty crazy. But let's talk about something you're doing coming up here. You know, again, depending on, I guess, how your training and everything goes, or I don't know, maybe you're like, no, I'm doing it.
Right.
So you're gonna try for the fastest known time on the C&O Canal, right? Which is 184 miles.
Yep.
Current time is 36 hours, 36 minutes, and 3 seconds. And so you're gonna try to beat that.
Yeah. So in 2018, when Mike Warding ran his, I met him. I went and drove to Hancock, Maryland, on the canal there, and I ran out 7 miles to meet him, and then I ran 7 miles back with him because he had posted on Twitter and social media that he was running, and if you wanted to come run with him, you could. And I ran with him for a half a mile at the Newport marathon earlier that year. So I'd met him then. I also met him at Marine Corps a couple of times at the starting line. So I've talked to him before. So I figured I'd go out there and run with him for a little bit and support him. So I ran out 7 miles to meet him, and then I ran 7 miles back. His brother and dad came, and they were his crew. So when we got back to Hancock, his crew was there, and I was 14 miles in. He was 90 miles in, you know.
Right.
So they had talked to us, and they said they were going to let him just run by himself for another until they got to Williamsport, Maryland, which was 26 miles away. And I was like, I can maybe go that far. So I ended up running to Williamsport with him. So I ended up doing 41 on the day. And that was by far my longest run at that time back then. So, I mean, we just talked the whole time. Like I said, he's completely normal guy. He celebrated when we got to mile 32. He celebrated that was my longest run. He was like, "Congrats, man! That's your longest run ever." And then we stopped and took a picture at the 100-mile marker on the canal. So it was pretty cool. So like from that experience, and then now after doing the Canal 100, I love being on the canal, running out there. So I've talked about it with a few people that I'm close with, and they've thought it's a decent idea. I don't know if good's the right word. I don't know if it's
is it ever a good idea?
Never a good idea. Right. But they're like, well, you can probably do it. Give it a shot, you know.
Yeah.
So I figured in October, if all is going well, we have a weekend set aside that we're going to go up to Cumberland, Maryland. That's where it starts, and it's 184.5 miles to D.C. So, like you said, the goal was 36 hours, 36 minutes, and 2 seconds.
That's right.
To take it down. So, hopefully, there's a couple detours on the towpath right now that will add some distance.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully those are back open. But if not, still going to give it a shot while I can. If I finish under that time, great. If I finish over that time, great. You know, just finishing that many miles at one time would be special for me. So
have you thought about yet? Like, does crewing something like that look a lot different? Like, do you need more people? On something like that?
So Katie, of course, will crew. I'm gonna ask a couple other people if they'll come help her out and crew. And then this is, I guess, the first time I've really said this out loud. So maybe somebody will watch this and want to come help me too. But I have a couple
volunteers
people,
are welcome.
Right. I've had a couple of people before this who I've told, and they've said they'd be willing to come run some miles with me and stuff. So as we get closer to the date and I'm still feeling good enough to go do it, I'll try to recruit some more help. And the more people running with me, the better. But I'm looking forward to it. I feel like I'm ready. I was actually going to try to do it this spring, and then I decided I would go do Boston, and then there was not really a good weekend before it started getting too hot, you know. So hopefully in October the weather will cooperate, and we'll just give it a go.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm ready for it.
Oh man, I'm excited for you. I'm gonna have to keep up with you on that and see how things go. So one of the other things you're getting into is, or maybe you've been into, I don't know, but race directing, right? So you got, is it 2 races now that you're doing?
Yeah, so last year I took over Fire on the Mountain. So 5 years ago now, I participated for the first time. I ran the relay, so out 25K, and then someone else came back 25K.
Yep.
And then the next year I ran the whole 50K, and I was second place overall. Next year I came back. I was ready to win it. And then a guy from Alaska came, and he crushed me, and I got second place again.
Did you talk to him at all? Like, dude,
no,
Alaska, how did you come?
I couldn't talk to him. He was 40 minutes ahead of me.
Yeah. He was gone.
He was gone. We said go, and he was already, he was gone before I got back to the finish line.
Wow.
So then I came back the next year, and that was when I ran the 456, and I won. So,
what year was that again?
That was 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then the race director at the time, Kevin Spradlin, he had talked to me before about that was the last year he was going to have the race.
Oh, wow.
So I said, hey, before you get rid of it, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
So we talked, and I ended up taking over the race for him. So last year was my first year as race director there. We had 115 runners between the 25 and 50K. Which was more than what it had been in the past, so that was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
It was a great experience there.
So tell people a little bit about the run, like what the race itself. Like,
Okay, so the Fire on the Mountain, it's in Green Ridge State Forest.
So you drive by that if you're going out 68.
Yep,
right?
going out there. It's in Little Orleans, Maryland. So
Yep.
you get off exit 64, I think it is. Then you drive for a little bit, and then you're in the woods. And we start the race at the overlook. So it's some years you have a great view where you can see for miles. Other years you look at fog.
Yeah.
And we encourage people to go down there after the race so they can see the view. But it's about a mile on the road, on the dirt road, and then you go onto the red trail, which is very, very challenging. It's about 7.5 miles on the red trail, a lot of elevation gain, some pretty narrow trails on the side of a mountain.
Okay.
We call them Billy Goat trails.
I think where you're talking about, I took my daughter backpacking when she
Okay.
was younger, and literally there was a time, so we're on, I think on one of these sides of these mountains you're talking about, and she almost dropped off, and I grabbed her backpack and pulled her up.
Yeah.
We were on the side, and there was it wasn't like she was going to die in this river, but there was a stream down below.
Yeah.
And it was pretty steep, and the trail was super narrow.
Yeah, there's a couple parts.
That's it?
That's it.
You're running on that?
You're running on that.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So
Wow.
it's pretty good. And then after you're on that red trail, you get to a flatter green trail for about 7 miles. The only problem with the green trail is you have to cross a stream, and the stream just zigzags back and forth. So about 15 times you're crossing the stream. So depending on the weather before, it could be pretty wet. And then you have to go up a pretty there's the elevation gains, 5,400 feet a little bit. But and then when you get to the last aid station there at mile 16, it's a pretty nice, we call it the Oasis, and it's you have a very nice view of the land out there. And then you turn around and you come back and do it again. So anything you went down, you have to go back up.
Which is what you can see in the elevation profile there.
Right.
It looks like it's like maybe a little over 5 miles up. You just go.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So
which is pretty crazy.
Right. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
It's a challenging course for sure.
How would you rate it versus the Catoctin 50K?
I think the Catoctin. See, I only ran Catoctin once.
Okay.
So I choose not to remember very much of it.
Very hot.
Right. But I do remember running Catoctin, thinking the same thing I thought when I was on the green trail, which was I got to watch every single place I put my feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Fire on the Mountain had a little bit more elevation gain.
Okay.
But they're very comparable,
and they're both over 5,000 feet elevation.
They're very comparable races.
And it looks
and courses.
It looks comparable in the Catoctin 50 is like this too. There's not a lot of flat areas.
Right,
like
there's not.
You're either going up or you're going down most of the time.
Right.
So this looks pretty similar.
So when I talk to people about if they ask me like, hey, how should how should I run this race? What should I do? And I tell them, I said, listen, you have to run the runnable parts. So there's a couple different spots where you're on the dirt road.
Yeah.
I said, you got to hit those hard.
Right.
You got to run hard. And then if you have to walk up a hill, you got to walk up a hill.
Yeah, and that actually is like one of the things I found when I first started doing trail running, as opposed, because I started on the roads and had never done trail running, and then when you switch to trail, for me at least, I thought one of the mental challenges is you have to be able to switch. Like, you got to be able to hike,
right? And
then when you get to the top of the hill, you got to be able to
run.
You got to start running, even though you don't feel like
that was
it.
One
you
thing
got to get going, and that's hard mentally to kind of do that over and over and over again. Right?
I struggled with that too when I first got into any trail running. I struggled with that too. I'm like, first time I ran Fire on the Mountain, I got, you get 2 miles in and you got to go up a huge, I call it a hill. It's a mountain.
Yeah.
But, and I go, I'm 2 miles into a race.
Right.
Why am I walking?
Yes.
You have to flip that switch and you go, well, you have to walk. Otherwise, you're going to die at mile 2 of a race. And that's more embarrassing than walking right now.
Yep.
So, yeah, you're right.
There's wisdom in the hike.
It's a mental challenge for sure.
So what is it like being a race director? It sounds like it would be a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I found it to be pretty fun though. So I did a lot of coaching at the high school level in a lot of different sports. But now I'm not coaching because I'm at the elementary level. So this kind of took that place,
scratches that itch.
filled that void a little bit. So, but after the race and people come up to you, literally after Fire on the Mountain, I had more than 75% of the runners. They looked at me and said, "I want to kill you." And then like 30 seconds later, they're like, all right, that was good. You know what I mean? Like, I helped them accomplish something, so it's, that back to that community thing. And it's being able to help them and maybe bring them out and do something that they normally wouldn't do. Nice. So, I really enjoyed that part of it. There's some tricky things that I had to learn along the way. Getting the permits, getting the T-shirts.
There's got to be tons of logistical stuff.
Right. Worrying about, for me, it's, we had 115 people out there, and that's how many I wanted to finish. We had 3, I think, people that didn't finish. We had one guy that got lost and another guy that got hurt. So that stuff's going to happen. But we want to go out there, and I'm trying to make sure everybody's having a good time. I want everybody to have a personal best race and bring everybody back. So that part was kind of stressful, but I think everything turned out pretty good for us the first year. So.
Oh, so this last time was your first time being the director,
right?
Okay,
right. So now
That's awesome.
this year we're doing Fire on the Mountain again. So the 25K and 50K registration's open. It's on Ultra Sign Up. We got I think 45 people right now, and there's a cap of 125. So we're ahead of where we were last year. So that's good news.
I want to run it.
We got a spot open for you.
Yeah, I want to run it. I got to see how my body kind of responds. I'm trying to take it easy with my mileage, but that is, I wanted to do the cat, 25K.
Right.
I don't know if, I don't know how I'm going to do with that, but I think if I pace myself and take it easy, I think it's reasonable that I should be able to, I know I can do it and just finish it, but I want to do it and be in some decent shape to do it.
Now the 25K course is a little bit different. It goes on the roads back there for about 6.5, 7 miles. Okay. You're on dirt roads. Now they're hilly. Yeah. When I was actually the first person that ran the recon course for the old race director Kevin. He called me up and asked if I wanted to be his guinea pig. Yeah. So I said, sure, why not? So we go out there and he goes, all right, this is the starting line, and he kind of drove his car from point to point to get me on the right turns and stuff, and so that was pretty cool. We get to the 5K mark, and I looked at him and I said, that would be a hell of a 5K. Yeah. Like, I'm done. We can go back in the car, after going back up and down some of those hills. Yeah. But it's about 7 miles on the dirt road, and then you go on to the red trail coming back. Yeah. And the red trail is the harder of the two between the green and red.
That sounds like an interesting road.
Yeah, so you're on the road for about 7, and then you're on the trail to finish it up. All right. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, the 25K is pretty cool.
Sounds cool. All right. I'm looking forward to it. All right, and then the other race you're doing is called Lock to Lock.
Yep. So we have the first year race. It'll be this year, September 10th. Oh, Fire on the Mountain is November 6th this year.
And we'll put links to all this in the show notes, definitely. Okay. So we'll make sure we do all that. Yeah.
All right. Lock to Lock, September 10th. So we decided to do a marathon, half marathon, and a 10K, all on the towpath, starting in Williamsport.
Now, this is a race that you just started.
I just created it. Yeah. Yep, this will be the first year we've run it. I think the cap's at 150 people, and right now there's 39 or 40 signed up, so we're getting there.
Yep.
But we start at Lock 44 in Williamsport, and the race goes 6.56 miles out to Lock 43.
Okay.
So that's where lock to lock.
Yep.
So the houses. And then you turn around and come back, and that's your half marathon. And then if you're running the full marathon, you do that again.
Okay.
And then the 10K, of course, you'll run 3.1 out and then 3.1 back.
All right.
So it's
cool.
Pretty neat out there. On that part of the towpath, there's, you got the river on one side. There's some few bridges you'll see, and then it's a lot of mountains on the on the left side, and it's just beautiful out there.
Yeah.
I run there all the time. So.
Yeah. So there's a lot. Well, you've already done the race directing for one, but this is going to be a different kind of race.
Yeah,
right?
it's different. Yeah, different people to contact for the permits. Different parking people you got to contact.
Yep.
So there's a lot of moving parts, but it's all a learning process. I think it's fun, so it's something I enjoy to do. And I look at it now. We talked about it before about getting older and stuff, and I think, well, if no one would have
you got a little bit of
gray there. I know. But if no one would have came up and created ideas for races before, I wouldn't have been able to run any. So I'm hoping I can do that and
giving back a little bit.
Yeah, help out some people, maybe run some races, and that one's a completely different course. I think the elevation gain for the marathon will be 42 feet.
Yeah.
Compared to Fire on the Mountain.
Yeah.
So it'll be a little bit different of a course, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think that obviously will be a pretty cool way to give back, to create a race like that. That's really neat. But I also think thank you for sharing your story, how you got into running. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a huge inspiration for lots of people. The stories you've shared about your races, sounds like you've just had some pretty epic journeys, and you have maybe a big one to come here. Sounds like in the fall. So that's really exciting. So thank you, for sharing your stories with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate it, Adam. It was really nice to meet you.
Thank you, you too.
All right.
Thanks,
I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope it gave you a new insight into the talents, passions, and curiosities from Frederick, Maryland, and beyond. If you did, maybe you can help me out a bit. The best way for the show to grow in its reach is for you, the audience, to subscribe, like, and share this episode with your friends. Much appreciated. Until next time.